Hey guys, Kip here, Thousands of Roots, and we are putting together a garden series right now. We're working on it of how to put in a garden permaculture style. So this is going to be from concept to paper to measuring, back to paper, back to measuring, and then permanence. So that's what we're working. Come and join us for this journey, and if you're a beginning gardener, this is perfect for you. If you're gardener, experienced gardener, you just might still pick up a nugget or two from this. So I encourage you to check it out. Please comment on, hey, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Also, we have some particular challenges in this garden that most other people aren't going to have. We have some permanent features in this garden, i.e. fruit trees and bushes that are perennials. So we had to do some intelligent design, some permaculture design, working around those features. Everybody's situation is different, everybody's garden is going to be different, but I can almost guarantee you, you will pick up at least some kind of nugget from this. So thank you for watching and enjoy. Hey babe, what you working on?
Garden planning.
Garden planning.
Yep.
I was inspired to do a design for our garden, right? I'm not inspired to talk about garden plans all that often.
No.
So when I was...
Yay, my husband wants the garden plan. Like candy. No, better than candy.
Because I'm more of a garden doer and not so much of a garden planner.
Right.
So what's the sketch you're working on?
Well, we have a lot of perennials, fruit trees, fruit bushes, and things in our garden space.
Can you point out and describe what's what on here real quick?
Well, we have 4 apple trees, we have 3 pear trees, we have a random cherry, and other various bushes and trees in our garden space, and a very interesting fence line. This line's pretty straight, but the whole north side is just interesting fence line.
So we have a weird shape to work with.
We do, yep.
So one of the reasons for showing this video is to help teach others how to do a permaculture design of a garden. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of step 1. Get a sketch, put in your permanent features.
Yep.
So the features that are already in, that are permanents. So after you get the permanents in there, what are you working on next?
Well, at first I just made a picture on paper based on what I had in my mind. So the next step was I actually went out there and I just stood at all the different key points around the perimeter and looked out into the space and made sure that I had positioned trees and bushes and everything in the correct places.
And why do you want to get all that stuff correct?
If you don't get that set from the beginning, then when you go to mark out your planting beds for your vegetables, you're going to have to do a lot of erasing. So I wanted to make sure that the permanent things were in place first, and that way when we start to figure out our pathways and our vegetable beds, we're not having to erase as much. So now I'm trying to put in the vegetable garden beds and pathways between all the permanent things. Alright, so we went out and got some measurements so we know about how much space we have to work with as far as our vegetable growing beds. So now we can come back and take a look at our plan and start plugging in our different vegetable groups. We wanted to make sure and leave plenty of wide pathway space so that we could get wheelbarrow and wagon through. So we've got a wide pathway that starts from over here and you can go through the garden all along to the other side, to the far side and around, and then back out the front here.
So over here is our patio.
Yeah, this is our
And the greenhouse.
Greenhouse is right basically right here.
Yep.
That's about where the greenhouse sits.
So something you really want to think about, guys, is your growing spaces and utility. What do I mean by utility, hon?
Well, you're going to have plenty of room to bring in compost, to bring in wood chips, to haul out things that you don't want, branches when you prune your trees, and things like that.
So your pathways, you're going to want to think about being able to get into your garden with like our big wagon that takes up almost 3 feet. It's almost 3 feet wide. So you want to design your garden so you can maintenance your garden.
Another thing we did, which was Kip's idea from the beginning, and it was a great idea, is we have two big cattle panels that we strategically placed off our driveway on the edge, one on one side and one on the other side of the garden space. And those cattle panels can come fully off, and a truck can back on into the space, and then we can unload whatever we need to.
Yeah, I have to give credit on this one. I got this idea from Doug with Off-Grid.
With Doug and Stacy.
Yeah, I got that idea from him.
So this again is where the greenhouse is. So there's a big cattle panel right here, and we're not going to plant anything in this area. We're going to leave that an open space so that we can dump wood chips or whatever we need right there. And then down the other end of the garden, there's another cattle panel here. And this is our driveway. All along here is driveway. So it just makes super easy access for bringing things in for our garden.
So you want to set yourself up for success by the way you design your garden. So garden planting is not just planting your square foot growing spaces. You're also planning very seriously maintenance, adding material to your garden, taking material out.
Mm-hmm. At the very beginning, we talked about how we've got fruit trees and berry bushes kind of spread various places in our garden.
I think we have a thirsty little boy there. Are you thirsty?
No, potty.
Thirsty. So in the beginning, yeah, we talked about how we have fruit trees and berry bushes in our garden. And you typically don't see that in a normal garden space. A lot of people just do all of that separate in a separate orchard. But we really like the idea of putting perennials and annuals all together in the same space and using them together for different purposes. So that's another part of the big picture plan that we're working with, is seeing how we can use our perennials to help support the annuals in our garden. So eventually, the hope is that we can plant things that like shade underneath our fruit trees, and what else?
Well, growing the mulch in place, like all the pruning of the apple trees and all the pruning of the trees will be mulching the whole garden.
Yeah, so some of these perennials that we have will be able to utilize the prunings as mulch for the areas that we'll eventually plant annuals in the next year.
And all the leaves that fall also will be mulch.
Yeah, all the leaves
so
will act
it's
as
all
mulch.
kinds of. It'll draw in the pollinators. It'll draw in microorganisms in the soil. Also, when you're planning your bed sizes, there's certain reasons for certain bed sizes. Tell us about that, hon.
Yeah, in the past we've pretty much just used about a 2-foot wide growing bed space, and I liked that because I could reach all the way across the bed and not have to step over or go around the bed. But it did mean that we had to have a whole lot of pathway space, and so some wasted space in pathways. So this time what we're hoping to try and see if it works better is a 4-foot wide bed width. All of the beds except for one is hopefully going to be able to be that 4-foot wide spacing, and then our raised beds on the edges will be more like 2-foot wide, because we obviously can't go around and through the gate or through the fence. So the raised beds are all on the edges. They'll be 2 feet, and all the inner beds will hopefully be 4 feet. That way we won't have as much wasted space in pathways. and more growing space.
And what's a couple of the reasons for the raised beds on the edges?
I think we talked about this a little bit in a past video, but the hope is that by having raised beds on the edges of our garden, it will kind of act as a buffer for weeds and weed seed. We have just a jungly mess here through the summer, being on the creek here in Missouri. And so our garden, kitchen garden's actually just not very many feet from the creek, huh?
40?
Yeah, it's only about 40 feet from the creek and just very overgrown. So we've had a huge problem with weeds. So we are trying our best to think through ways to prevent weeds from getting into the garden, prevent seeds from coming through the outsides by putting those raised beds.
So it'll reduce the amount of seeds that can blow in because of the beds being raised. So it'll actually act as a buffer somewhat that way.
Yeah. Also, we're putting chickens. We only have one set of chickens so far, but hopefully we'll have another set of chickens on the edge between the creek and the garden, and they'll also help act as a buffer from all the weeds, weed seed.
Another one of the reasons for the raised beds, for instance, this one here, the ground slopes significantly this direction. So all the material we put in here in heavy rains, it wants to just wash out. So with the raised bed here, it'll stop that material. And so that's another one of the reasons. So you just want to observe and then design accordingly.
In the past, we've also done beds on contour, which is a permaculture idea. And the idea of putting your beds on contour is so that you can capture the rainwater and soak it into your beds. But we have found that we have so much rain that it's not really an issue of having a lack of water and needing to soak that. And even when we did do beds on contour, still the water would just run away. So
it becomes so heavy.
It becomes so heavy, yeah. Another thing we're going to be working into this whole plan is that some things like more sun and some things like more shade. And so because we're going to be putting a whole bunch of plants together in the same bed, we'll be able to use those plants to help each other out. For example, we can put lettuce that likes a lot of shade on the east side of, let's say, a trellis with a bunch of green beans. So by the time the sun gets high in the sky and is going down, it's the heat of the afternoon, the green beans will help shade the lettuce. So we'll do things like that to help provide either more or less sun depending on what the plants need.
Man, that's really smart.
There's a lot of people out there that have thought of some great things. So
Can you guys tell my wife loves gardening?
absolutely.
She does. She has 2 green thumbs.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so that concludes today's vlog of putting in your garden permaculture style. Whether this is your first time gardening or you're an old time gardener, you'll probably get a little something from these videos that we're putting out on how to put in your garden. Make sure you hang with us because there's more to come. We're going to do all the videos until this garden is fully put in, and we're going to bring you along with us on this journey. Also, if you haven't yet check out our Patreon. We got some cool stuff over there, a lot of free stuff, so go check it out. Thank you so much for watching, and whatever you do, do it with your whole heart.
Hey, Beetle. What are you doing?